Today's presentation is on group versus team leadership. Our agenda for today is a quick introduction on what those terms mean, then a discussion led by Jeff, a quick Q&A, and then we'll wrap it up.
So just to introduce what we mean by group versus team. So when we say group, we mean a number of individuals who are brought together by a common interest or shared tasks, but they typically work independently on tasks that they have their own accountability for. When we say team, we mean a number of individuals who are working towards a shared goal, and they work together towards a shared outcome. So how does this apply to a leader? As a leader of a group, you are a singular, strong leader who is delegating out to your group members who each have individual accountability. However, as a team leader, teams typically have multiple leaders who share responsibility and go off of each other to make sure that everything goes smoothly. And every team member has mutual accountability for the overall number of tasks. Can you still hear me? Okay, so that was all for the introduction, and I'll let Jeff take over with his presentation now.
Great. Hi. Thank you again for inviting me. I'll give it just a quick intro. I'm not going to present any slides, so I'd kind of like to have hopefully a little bit of as much as we can discussion throughout, but I'd like to share some experiences and just I'll introduce myself and then I'll explain some experiences at Pepsi or that I've had in my career on that subject. And so on group versus team mindset, and even as I'm on the Biosystems Engineering Board, Industry Advisory Board at MSU. And so in that role for the last about 8 or 9 years, I've been able to coach senior design projects. And so I get to see different groups in that context as well, which is very different than the groups and teams that I get to work with. But anyway, okay, before I dive into that, I'm from Seattle, Washington originally, and I went to University of Washington, majored in paper science and engineering, got a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering and making of paper. Sounds I used to say it sounds weird, but that's not that weird anymore. It seems normal to me. Went to work at Weyerhaeuser Company out in Tacoma, worked there for about 8 years, and decided I love research. And I'm going to get into that a little bit and kind of maybe how it in my examples for groups and teams. But I went back to graduate school, so I wrote a proposal, and Weyerhaeuser funded my master's and PhD, and I studied the same thing. So but a lot more detailed in how to make paper. I went to work at Kimberly-Clark up in Neenah, Wisconsin. So moved to the Midwest, and I worked at Kimberly-Clark doing long-term research. I have about almost 30 patents, 25 to 30 patents, depending on how you count and which ones are still being funded. I'm not sure, but have a lot of patents and inventing new stuff in diapers and adult care, fem care, baby care, all that stuff. Viva paper towel. I could go into we'll talk an hour next time on all that. I love that stuff. Nerd out big time. I took a sabbatical, kind of break in between, moved to Boston for a year and taught middle school math and science. And so there's a bunch of students that are actually now probably in their mid-20s that know a lot about pulp and paper because their 5th grade science teacher was crazy about that. And so I did that for a year and moved back to the Midwest and to Chicago area, Naperville specifically is where I live now. And realized there's no paper science PhDs needed in Chicago. It turns out they're either in Neenah, Wisconsin, or in China or India. And so I decided to go into food, which isn't that much different actually, because I was working on orange juice. And so there's pulp and orange juice, and there's pulp and paper, and it was very similar. I did that for 12 years doing orange juice, Tropicana, naked juice research. And again, I got to do the long-term stuff. And so kind of the fun further out research for PepsiCo on those brands until right before COVID, about a month before, so it's probably February 2020. We had a restructuring, new opportunities came up, and I'm on the food side. So I work with the Frito-Lay brands, Quaker Foods, a lot of Captain Crunch. I don't know if you college students like your Captain Crunch, but I get to work on some of those things. Frito-Lay, Cheetos, Flamin' Hot, whatever, like yeah, those brands, Chewy bars. So I lead the long-term research, engineering research for PepsiCo Foods products. And so yeah, so that's what I do now, and I love it. I'm still really excited about it, and hope I get to keep doing it for many years to come. Can you guys hear me okay? I know everybody's on mute and probably eating and
Yeah, we can hear you.
you got me all right? Okay, just make sure I'm not talking to myself. Okay. Good. So again, I'm not a huge fan of lecturing, but I will kind of go over and give some examples and try to make it a little interesting. So as you guys multitask and do like what I do in meetings, hopefully it'll be something that you can kind of take away. So when I was thinking about this topic, and I even had to like figure out, okay, what is meant by group or team? Because you can define it any way you want, really. Even Webster's doesn't help you too much, but I get the construct of what this is about, and have some really good examples and how different types of engineering roles really can use different types of leadership. And so that's kind of what I want to leave you with at the very end here, is to give some examples. But there's no one, in my experience, a team or group, one that's better than the other. It just depends on when you apply it. And so, and how to know when to apply which type of leadership is going to be kind of some of it you can learn, some of it you just got to learn from experience. But I'm going to talk about those two different types of engineering careers, not even careers, I guess, projects or programs that you're going to get to lead as future engineers. And then how leadership in each of those kind of are different, and how to make them effective. And so both of them have in common a common goal. So right, so teams and groups, I mean, you're trying to get something done. You can't do it by yourself, or for whatever reason you have to work as a group, or you get to work with a team. In my team of engineers, I have well, my broader team, about 40 engineers. There's probably about 80% are female engineers, which is pretty awesome. When I started in a engineering career, that wasn't always the case. But we have a very diverse group of engineers and people on my team. I think I have one other Caucasian male white person on my team, and that's pretty neat that we're so diverse. And I think that really helps, whether you're on a team or a group, or what you're, getting diverse feedback, getting diverse perspectives, and how to solve problems is super important, not just in research, but I would say especially in research, but I'm sure in a lot of other roles. And so a common goal, and then how to get there. And what I want to describe is what there is. And so there's a few different types of projects. And from broadly speaking, there's, I'm going to call it city building. There's engineers that have a defined outcome, a defined goal and a project. And your goal is to get it done as efficient as possible. And you have experts, and you call it, even if you're navigating, another way to look at it is using GPS, right? So there's multiple ways you can get there, but you got to figure out the best way, and you got to avoid traffic. And or if you're building a city, there's codes and structures, and we have at Pepsi, we have thousands of engineers. Any company like Pepsi has thousands of those types of engineers, and it's super important. If we didn't have those engineers, then we wouldn't have a company, because we have to launch new products. We have problems at plants and manufacturing facilities we have to solve. We have all kinds of problems, and that's the most common type of engineer: supply chain, operations, research engineers that solve problems. And so that's the one type. The other type, the type that I get to play in, and I'll talk about that, is kind of more wayfinding. So more, I think, Lewis and Clark. Think there's no maps. There's no city planning. It doesn't matter if you know how to build a bridge, because you're not building bridges. You're maybe carving a canoe, but besides that, you're trying to figure things out. And that, to me, takes a different type of leadership, a different type of engineer, a different approach that is very different from the city building. So that's kind of the construct that I want to give these examples from. And if you haven't sensed, I'm kind of biased towards the wayfinding, just because I love that. I'm comfortable in that space. So I will be again, I'm kind of speaking for myself here. This isn't so much at all sanctioned by Pepsi, or I have to say this recording, right? I should probably read my disclaimer thing that I'm supposed to say in times like this, but this is me. This is just Jeff Matthews' experience from Morehouse and Kimberly Clark and in school and life. And yeah, so I should have probably started with that, but but I'm going to give some examples from mostly from PepsiCo because it's most recent. So examples of groups, groups that work together. So I think of sports, I think of military, right? Very hierarchical, and they're pretty defined roles, you know, even on a sports team, right? You got a coach, you got trainers, you got people in charge of uniforms, you got, well, I have 10 and 12-year-old kids, you got people that email the parents. Like there's individual roles that people take, and it's all for a common goal, and it's for the kids to have fun in that case, or it's for the Green Bay Packers to win, if it's for a football team, if it's wow, anybody paying attention? Okay, just want to make sure. I had to throw that out there just to see if anybody even comes off mute, but maybe you're just all
Oh, Packers.
okay. Thank you. Okay, good. Thank you, Justin. Thanks. I just want to make sure
Go
that somebody's
Packers.
so hey, Alec. All right. Okay, good. Thank you. Good. All right. That was a quick mic check. Thanks for going with me on that. So that's what I picture as far as for group. It's teams, capstone projects. A lot of time the senior design projects that I've been involved with are group projects where you have individuals, and I always, who's in charge, who's the writer, who's the communicator, who's the it's a little bit, it's more defined. You got defined roles, and your outcome is going to be this report that has a structure because your professor tells you it has to have these chapters and this many pages and this many references or whatever it is. And so it's city building, right? I mean, it's, even though it's research and you're kind of doing new stuff and you're answering questions, solving problems, in general, it's a pretty defined construct, and it's important to have a team. If everybody just said, hey, we're going to figure this out together, and everybody works on different stuff, then ooh, spotlight my video. I don't even know what happened here, and somebody's got some Zoom control. I don't even know. Anyway, so senior design projects, commercializing, like I said, new products, operations, engineering, supply chain. Those are kind of examples to me of groups that benefit from hierarchy and structure, and having a plan and a mission, and everybody working together with your specific roles to accomplish that. A chain of command, even the word command and chain of command, it's very structured like that. So there's tasks to be done. Everybody does their part. You get, say, promoted, or you move on to another role based on merit or things that you've done, or time spent sometimes, or how much responsibility you want. I mean, it's a pretty defined structure. And like I said, most of the people in my world are in engineering for consumer packaged goods. Most of the engineers are that type of have those roles, and there's a lot of work to be done in that, problems to be solved, and you guys go to school for that. I mean, I'd say school work and class work is very much in that same mindset, and so we're trained to be members of a group and to be experts and to have confidence. I think one of the big words for me, and as part of when I'm sometimes part of groups like this where I'm the engineer in the room, and I have to have confidence. If I don't know the answer as an engineer, if I don't know what the right angle for a bridge is, or if I don't know how fast this motor should be running, like, I'll figure it out. Like, I'll find it out. I'll call the manufacturer. I will solve the problem. Like, it's pretty comfortable that way, actually, because it's defined. There's success. You're going to launch the product. If you don't launch it by February 2022, then yeah, good luck getting a good rating on your year-end review, kind of thing. Like, it's pretty defined, and that's comfortable for a lot of people. Like, I like it. Even just talking about it sounds kind of nice, having that structure. But it takes confidence in yourself, but also confidence in the other members that are experts in their area. You have to have confidence in them, and so. Yeah, like I said, if you don't know the answer, you got to look it up. And so, like again, building the city, or building roads, bridges, building houses. If you don't know the codes, if you don't know how much, structural engineers and architects, and I mean, there's millions of these roles that I think it's really important to have that expertise and to have that confidence, to be part of a group, and you own your role, and everybody plays a part. And so, I would say the mindset, if you're a leader and you find yourself leading in that space, and I guarantee you, some of you guys are going to be in this place, is that the role of the leader tends to be efficiency, task oriented. You'll see Gantt charts. You want to give them confidence, keep everybody focused on the vision for kind of, hey, what is this city going to look like when it's done? Here's the blueprints for the house. Let's all sit down and we'll look at it and, okay, what's coming next? You got the plumber coming in, or you got the, whatever. You got to make sure you have the right people on the team. But in short, it's a well-defined mission where success is very clear. Everybody knows success is we have more points on the scoreboard at the end of the game than the other team. And then everybody works together to solve the problem, to figure it out. Hopefully your field goal kicker makes a field goal when it's needed, that kind of thing. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit, but I would like to open up before any kind of questions on that, because that's probably the biggest chunk or the most probable career as engineers, that type of work. It might not be with paper, it might not be with might not be with other things, might not be with food, might be with whatever, cars, could be petroleum, could be anything. But that is a very common problem solving engineering group structure. Okay. And feel free at the end, I know we're going to have some more discussion too, but now I'm going to switch to where I'm a little bit more comfortable, and actually I have less to say on this, but I'm a lot more comfortable in this space. But team and working as a team, I see as quite a bit more organic. And so it's a looser structure. And again, explorers, I think Lewis and Clark, core of discovery, upstream inventors, where the success isn't really clear. I don't know what it's going to look like. I really have no idea. This is completely new space. Where I said before, confidence is really important. In this space, confidence is, I see, much less important, and probably a hindrance as a leader to come in with so much confidence when we don't know how we're going to get there. We got to find our way. I think vulnerability and admitting, wow, I don't know this, and nobody here probably does. Otherwise, they'd have other people come in and solve it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have jobs, because this is new space. And leading in that space is such a different space as an engineering leader. In that wayfinding, there's not a defined launch date, and this is what the product looks like. And so you got to go find the piece of equipment that makes that. That's hard engineering. I'm not trying to diminish it, so I'm trying to be very conscious of my bias here, but it's not the space that I'm comfortable in or live in. My space is more, hey, we want to make Chewy Bar completely different, or we want to put orange pulp and fiber and all that stuff back in orange juice without making it really thick and have to eat with a spoon. And so we're going to have to figure out something with enzymes to eat the stuff, because we can't add water. It's 100% orange juice. And so, big problems that are undefined. And so there is, you have to focus on the vision. You got to know there's a West Coast when you leave the East Coast and you're Lewis and Clark. But even that example, actually, there's a fun book. I'm not going to recommend it too much because there's a little bit of a religious bent to it, so I don't want to offend people. But it's called Canoeing the Mountains, and it speaks to, as a leader, it speaks to maybe when you start out a project. In their case, they brought canoes, and their plan was to go to the head rivers of Mississippi and then head west, where the river was going to take them by canoe to the Pacific Ocean. Turns out there was these things called the Rocky Mountains, so they ended up ditching the canoes and totally planning differently. But that agility or being flexible is really important in the wayfinding kind of Lewis and Clark example that I started with. And so, wilderness, new ways to get there, whether it's a coast, or whether it's rocket ships, or electric cars, or diapers, or new Dorito shapes, or whatever it is. Like, that's it takes a different type of leadership in a way. And I think why my personality probably fits it is that you kind of have to have a joy of not knowing, like being in a space that's a big ocean, and it's you just have to kind of be happy about not knowing everything, and leaning into how we're going to get there as a team. And I see that more as a team construct of listening, learning from diverse perspectives. I've seen so many benefits of I would say young engineers that come in with a whole different perspective than an engineer on my team that might be in her or his 50s, 60s. But then you have a 23-year-old that comes in and is like, you know what, this reminds me of something, and just being open to that. And sometimes you don't get that in the confidence group engineering kind of structure. Like, it's generally you listen to experience and you get it done, you learn how to do it efficiently. In this case, I think diversity of thought when you're in a team structure like that, when it's less defined, is really important. Can grow together, you can learn together. The mindset of meetings. So if you find yourself in this case, in this type of structure, kind of even my team meetings, we do a lot of practicing, even of like, I don't know, like I really, that's so beautiful when somebody, especially an engineer who's like 60 years old and has, 30 years in industry, to say, wow, I have no idea, let's figure that out. It's so fun to me. And that's kind of the leader that you need to have in that space, is somebody who can lean in and prepare the team for failure. Like, most of my projects don't succeed. Like, you could tell my boss that too, and he'd be happy. If all my stuff succeeded, I'm not trying hard enough. I mean, we, in this space of kind of team, what I call, more team or loose leadership, it's important to be very open-handed, very, very much vulnerable, kind of like I talked about. So how to motivate the team of people, even when projects are going to fail, and maybe it's not time for that yet. Maybe we're going to invent something that's going to be launched in 15, 20 years. That's okay. Document it. We learned along the way. We got stronger. So that's pretty important. So let me, almost wrapping up on this one. So yeah, success and failure. I tell somebody, like, actually the most recent promotion that I was able to give to a team member, he hadn't had a successful project in 3 years. Like, really, like, failed like pretty big. I mean, we invested a lot of money in his projects, and but he did them in the right way, and he worked well with people. We learned a lot. We're probably going to do some after he retires, I'm guessing. But it was definitely good work. And so just being able to let the team be comfortable in a space where it's safe to try things. It's okay to fail. So hopefully you can kind of see those two key differences, like and as a leader, kind of my final thought is identifying which one you have. And so, are you going to be doing an engineering, city building, GPS? Do you need canoes, and it's structured? You have a map in front of you, and you turn right, left, and you kind of figure that out. Or are you gonna kind of head west and wayfinding vulnerability? Is that kind of leadership necessary? Because my team right now, to be a little candid, I know it's still recording, is I have a bunch of really good bridge builders and GPS and direction followers, and they're awesome. They're some of the strongest engineers in the company. And since kind of COVID-ish, we've been working to build them and build their wayfinding skills, and to make them more comfortable in spaces that they weren't really naturally in. And that's fun too. So as a leader, identifying which approach to take, which type of projects do you have, and then your team, and what strengths do they have? Are they more rule followers? Are they more the innovators? It takes totally different leadership for those. So, all right, I see a question in chat, but I would like you guys to hopefully come off mute a little bit, maybe defend your football team first, but I'd like to hear some kind of questions or thoughts, even pushback on some of these, or whatever you guys have. So I'm going to read this question. How has your leadership style changed from college up till now? So great question. I would say most engineering leaders or engineers that come from college are very much of the mindset of the one that I started with. And so I think in this construct, it's the team that, the group leaders of being able to solve problems. That's what you guys are trained to do, right? I mean, you can integrate, you can program things, it's structure. You need to get this done, and you have until next Friday, and give me a report, and let's do that. And that's super, like I said, that's the most of what engineering roles are, from building skyscrapers to all that stuff. I would say where I've changed in my leadership has been to focus more on the people. And so I kind of touched on it at the end there, is recognizing my team has this expertise or this bent or these experiences, but I'm being asked from my leaders to come up with some pretty blue sky ideas. Like let's reinvent how we do something. And so I put my first team kind of onto a project, and they were it was really uncomfortable listening to them and watching them because they didn't know. They like, what do you mean? We have to come up, like, who do I call? Like, just tell me who to talk to and we'll figure it out. I'm like, no, there's nobody. You're the expert now at Pepsi, and you are the one who and you don't know. I don't know either, but let's figure it out together. Like that, as a leader, growing that ability to be able to walk people through that those differences where maybe people have a tendency to do one thing or a strength, and you can take advantage of the strengths for sure. I'm a big proponent of strength finding. But sometimes the roles don't match or tasks don't match our strengths. And so as a leader, that's what's really changed for me is I focus more on the people. I see projects, it sounds kind of cliche, but I see projects as cool opportunities to build the people. Where in the past, and especially when I was a more of a group kind of leader, like it's like, okay, I got this team of people, how can I get them to somehow work together to get this done on time, maybe early, and it's going to be great. And that's important. And that's, I'm not, again, I really am biased. But now I see it a lot more as, okay, I have these people who really could grow in this area, have these projects, as long as I don't screw up the projects that bad. The best thing for Pepsi and the best thing for these people is to grow them with these projects. And so I assign projects much differently than I used to. Instead of assigning it to the person who can get it done fastest and the best, and which sometimes there are cases where that has to be, but mostly I look at where they're going to grow, how does it fit in with their career plan that they want or that we agree on. That's really been the biggest transition for me, or I would say just the last 10 years, and I've been out for 25 years or so, but I would say in the last 10 years the biggest transition has been more focused on people's growing the people. So good question. Okay, any comments? Yeah.
If anyone in the classroom has a question, just gesture to me and I'll bring the microphone over to you. And then I have a question really quick.
Yeah, sure.
So I was wondering, how do you begin to transition a group environment into a team environment? And what I mean by that is that I'm in some classes where we do group projects. Can you hear me all right?
Oh, I just lost you. We're here. Group
Sorry, the mic
projects.
cut out.
Okay, no problem. Group
I've been
projects.
in
Yep.
some situations where my group members want to be led rather than take equal stake in responsibility for planning and executing the project. So my question to you is, how do you use those skills as a leader to transition a group setting into a team setting?
Oh man, that's tough. It is really hard, especially in that. And like I said, I've seen the capstone and senior design projects, and you can tell the groups that work really well together and the ones that one person did everything, or a couple people and other people kind of coasted. And that's hard. It's hard when you're a group of peers where there's maybe an assigned leader, but in general, it just kind of happens. I would say, finding out what motivates each person, but again, you don't have the luxury of time in these projects, right? A lot of times in your classes, or even if it takes a whole year, I mean, you don't really get to know the people very well and their styles and what makes them work. The ones that I've seen be most successful is really focusing on the end, like getting it done, right? Like when you're in school, and doing projects like that, different people are motivated by different things, and to have different standards for quality, and that's going to be tough to change somebody's different standard for quality than yours. I'm trying to be political here. But I think focusing on the outcome and getting alignment, and to me, I mean, it just a little secret sauce for me personally is making it fun. And so if there's any way to get loose connections, to connect outside the project, to kind of round the corners off instead of having it be all about the project and all about getting it done. If there's any way to kind of break into that dynamic, I've seen groups that gel, that want to go hang out after the final presentation versus like, high five, all right, good luck in college, or good luck in your career, I guess. That those groups are much more successful if there's some way you can kind of work on the building rapport piece. That is that's one recommendation too. So I would say trying to be patient with people that are different than you in different ways, but also trying to break down those barriers. You might not naturally be friends with your team. You're stuck with them. Maybe you picked them, maybe you didn't. But it's an awesome opportunity and a growth opportunity for yourself as you go into into the working world is that you're going to have teams and people that are so different from you, and it's beautiful. And so if you can kind of lean into those differences, even if you might have grown up thinking, oh, that difference, that person, their standards are a lot lower than me, so really that's awesome. They have other strengths and they can add to it. So I would say that's that's how I tend to approach those things. And I'm full candidness. I wasn't probably the strongest teammate in college, and so I'm kind of thinking also like what would have motivated me. But having that social connection and common goal, like, hey, we just want to get this done. Let's work together, and that kind of approach works well for me personally. That's my kind of style. But everybody's going to have different. Do other people, so you guys have a lot of experience in this space, so I'm not going to ask you what engineering project has been your biggest triumph in your career, but I think one thing that I would like to hear from one or two of you, if people are comfortable, is group experiences like that or team experiences. How have you had success or failures in that setting of what's something that has worked and maybe some of you tried that totally didn't work at all? Does anybody have some experiences that they're comfortable sharing? Could be even high school projects, but in college projects. No?
Jeff, can you hear me?
Yeah, man. Yep.
All right.
I can.
Now you
Yeah.
can. Sorry. Green or red? Green means on, right? I guess I was going to ask a question too, but this kind of goes with it. One thing that I found very successful is kind of go off to Haley's question too, but like finding your role in the group. I've been in projects where, myself, I don't know, this thing's weird. Myself maybe feels like a leader, but then, the person next to you also kind of wants to lead the project. So how do you, for a question to go along with that response is maybe how do you deal with that? And, if you are a leader, how do you maybe sit back and just kind of let something go over your head?
Yeah. No, I think I got the gist of that. Some audio in and out, but I think I got it. Like, and that's pretty common. Yeah, that's pretty common. Some of that comes where I've seen like less experienced engineers tend to, you really want to like make a name for yourself. You want to be a leader. You want to be seen as a leader leading a project. And then when you have a few of them trying to do the same thing, the most mature leader is the one actually that tends to step back. It's not maybe the one that stands up tallest and is loudest and gives a final presentation. I think a lot of good leaders recognize that, all right, you can lead in different ways. And sometimes leading is stepping back. And it seems hard. And especially if there's a grade and you're like, oh man, what if I don't get, if I'm not seen as the leader, I'm not going to get it's much more comfortable for everybody sometimes to step back. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the, hey, let's talk about it and separate it and get different tasks. And hey, you lead this part, I'll lead this part. And you can, it sounds like an easy thing it's an easy answer that I could give, but is just lead different parts, right? But that's not always the case, I think. And I took that inside your question that I'm sure you would have done that if it was easy enough. Sometimes being a leader is to kind of lead from behind or lead without influence, or there's books on that of how to be a leader that you're not seen officially as a leader. So that's tough, but that's kind of one thing to keep in mind, is that a leader isn't always the leader.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
That's cool. I got to get mine to do that where it echoes and then I sound really important. I tried to do that one time with my phone, like intentionally. It worked in a meeting. Like I turned on my phone at the right time and I said, this is really important. Like you just tried to do that. No. Okay. Any other examples or questions? Like really good question. Like I want to hear more of like some real life examples. Even if it's people on the call, you can just like make up a new name for them. I might have I'm trying to think of other examples. Hey, no problem. Oh, technically in the class. Oh, okay. Got it. Are you guys in a classroom? I guess I should have asked that. I picture everybody's like on their beds, like, or sitting in a living room or something. Are you guys together? When you can talk? No. Okay. Thanks. That's a good way. We could just do sign language.
In person. Can you hear me properly?
Yeah, I can. Now,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're all in the classroom, but we're having technical difficulties with the mic.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So we host SEM in hybrid formats. People can join via Zoom, or we've got probably about 15 people here in person as well.
Oh, great. Great. Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, hold on. Any other questions?
Questions or examples even. I'd love to hear, hey, I was doing this project or yeah, or questions. I'm happy to take questions too.
All right, let's turn the video on.
Yes, we will. Are you comfortable being on video?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good. That's a good question.
Well,
Hi.
question, so in a group setting, it's pretty easy to set expectations for the group because
Mm.
there's one defined leader. But in a team, how do you more so define the expectations and how do you deal with them if they're not met? If that's
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question because that's what I have to deal with all the time, and it's a blessing and a curse. So doing when you're less defined, so in a say a team setting when it's less defined, you still have to have deadlines. But when you're like Lewis and Clark, like I can't remember what that was, but they said their plan was to be back in a year or two, but it took 3 or 4 or something. And like, don't quote me on that. There's a beautiful book on that too by a famous author that maybe some of you guys read, but McCullough, I think. Anyway, but it's kind of best laid plans. You have to have some structure. You can't just like walk off into the wilderness and say we're going to figure out something. So there is some structure. As a leader in that space, though, to me, the biggest challenge is keeping people's motivation and focus when you thought you were going to get to the Rocky Mountains by Wednesday, but you're not even close, and it's going to actually be in March, and you're going to have to stay. It's keeping people motivated, and feeling the importance of the project or having the vision for the end. Like, hey, I know it's going horribly. And I know that we thought that was going to be easy, but now we just uncovered 3 more problems, but we'll figure it out. Like that as a leader has been the big challenge for in that space. It tends to be keeping people focused and motivated, kind of being the cheerleader a little bit sometimes. That's been one of the fun challenges. Oh, hi class. So yeah, did that kind of get at what you were asking a little bit about less defined? You have to have some definition, but then just be able to be flexible and motivate the team when you don't get there. Yeah. Okay. Hey, thanks. All right. That's a good hand motion. Universal thumbs up. I appreciate it. Did they feed you? I hope you guys got food or something there because it's like late dinner time. Yeah. Yeah. 1 for pizza, 2 for oh wait, is that the better amount of Pepsico? It looked like Ruffles. I wasn't sure though because it was all fuzzy fancy. But that's not Pepsi. But that's okay though. That's okay. That's good. That's good. That's solid food. I'm sure some brilliant researchers came up with ways to keep that powder stuck on there over the supply chain. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Any other questions? I know we got some more time if you guys have other thoughts or questions. I'll put my email address here too, just in case if I don't know, but feel free to reach out. I love connecting with folks. If some question or idea comes up afterwards, or you have a big problem and you couldn't mention it because the person sitting next to you was the main problem in your group.
Go to the group. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can right now.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh my God. I have a fun question for you.
Sure.
Are you allowed to tell us what new products you're working on, or are you allowed to send us any free samples?
Yeah, it'd be better than your donuts for sure. So I can tell you some exciting stuff. If it wasn't recording, I could tell you more, but I could tell you some cool stuff. So yeah, one of the most recent projects, I kind of touched on it quickly on the orange juice front, is that orange juice Tropicana, Simply Orange. We own Tropicana, but the consumption has gone down. It's crazy. Like people don't sit in their dining room tables and drink a big glass of orange juice every morning anymore. And some of that's because of Atkins. Some of it's because of sugar. being evil and, you know, kind of like the new fat. I guess fat used to be that way, but now sugar is horrible. And so orange juice is not doing well. And actually most recent, a few weeks ago, Pepsi sold Tropicana. And so it went to private equity firm. So we don't even own Tropicana anymore. But the project that I wanted to mention was kind of fixing that. And so when we look at our huge piles of waste when you're making orange juice, only 50% of the orange is juice. The rest goes to cattle feed. And what we found was not just the pulp, but the spokes of the oranges that we were selling as cattle feed. We're paying a lot of money to dry it out and pellets and ship it to Europe for cows. That stuff is what you eat when you're eating the orange, like when you're eating a slice of orange. And no doctors would say, oh, don't eat oranges, but don't drink juice. You want to eat your fruit, don't drink your fruit. So anyway, my team of engineers unlocked a way to do that with natural enzymes. So the same enzymes that are in fruit and kind of break up your orange juice in unpasteurized orange juice, is we were able to take those enzymes, break down that fiber component and in a smart way, because you can't break it down too much, otherwise it turns into sugars. I don't know if you guys remember from your chemistry class, you got long chains of carbon that make up fiber, and if you chop it too much, then it becomes sugar. So keeping it long enough that it's not sugar, but short enough that it's not thick like orange sauce, because you have to drink it on the go. So my team is an 8-year project. It sounds like we just kind of worked for 6 months now. It was an 8-year project. Launched as Tropicana Whole Fruit in France and the UK. We invested, recordings on, so I'll be sensitive here, but over 10, 15, $20 million as a company, innovating that brand, that product, bringing it to market, serving size, regulations, all that stuff. And it was in market for about a year, maybe 9 months. And then we pulled all the assets out and we're not doing it anymore because COVID and other reasons. It just didn't sell well. There's a whole another case study on that needs to happen, of how to talk about it to consumers, because we were using more of the whole orange to make this high fiber product. But how do you get more whole orange when the consumers know that Tropicana is 100% orange juice? It's 100% oranges. Like our ads had the oranges jumping in the container. So now to say, well, really, we're 110% oranges? No. Oh, we're putting waste in that. No, we're not putting waste. You can't say that. Like, I'm horrible at marketing, but it's really good stuff. Like, our intent was good. Our sugar to fiber ratio, the glycemic index, we had really good data. We spent so much money on health studies and working with universities to prove the health benefits of this, and it's not in market because we couldn't talk about it in a smart way that consumers could figure it out. So anyway, there was big engineering work that happened on that. That was a wayfinding project, but at the end, a lot of projects like that, you're wayfinding. How do we figure it out? I borrowed a disc refiner for wood chips from some university in Michigan, Western Michigan University. I borrowed this wood chip refiner, brought it down to Florida, and we're sticking oranges in it to make our first stuff in 2012. We were goofing around, like really trying to solve it. And then towards the end, the last 2 years, it was all about bridge building and how do we get these assets in the building and how do we pipe this and that. So the project and team changed members a little bit, but it actually is an example that started from wayfinding, discovered America. Now we got to build Chicago or Detroit. How do we build cities? And taking engineers to do those things was a fun challenge. And like I kind of said, I had to cheer my team up, bought them a lot of mugs and shirts, and we talked about the success, and we learned a lot along the way. And we're launching products that are similar, but that one didn't work out so well. But we learned a lot. A lot of people had good careers or growth periods in those 8 years. And that's, to me, what it's about. Like, it was all right to not have a product in market. Like, it's okay. We learned, we got smarter, we did it for the right reasons. We weren't trying to steal money from people or make people unhealthy. To me, it was a really beautiful project and a good example of how you can have success even when a lot of people would see it as a failure. So yeah, that was a long answer. Wow, I should be professor. Any other questions? If there's a mute, or you can, oh yeah.
Stop this. Testing. This is work.
Yeah. Gotcha.
I was just wondering, what was one of your most successful projects, and what were the factors that made it so successful? Like, was it the workers or the expectations that were met? I was just curious. Thank you.
Oh, that's a great question. That's really, really good question. It's just funny because I won't, but I would give the project that I just gave a success, my most successful. Like it was the longest one that I worked on for a single project, and it was successful. It's not a market, but there's so many successes that came out of it. But I'm not going to do that. But I will tell you that's the single answer to that. I would say a project that I'm working on now is shaping up to be a really big success. And anybody raise your hand. I can see the class now, which is kind of cool. So raise your hand if you have heard of the brand Popcorners, or if you've eaten Popcorners chips before. Okay. Okay, good. Yes. Thank you. I got 2 hands up front. Yay. Popcorners, it's a big brand. We just bought them right around January 2020. And that brand and that platform of healthier snacking is huge. And that from PepsiCo and even our competitors, the reason why I can say this on recording is because it's pretty intuitive, but people want to have healthy on the go snacks. And, Doritos are great and Cheetos are awesome. I could probably reach, my kids there's probably empty bags like anywhere here near me. And those are great and they serve a purpose. But it takes research to get into other brands, other markets, to get those globally distributed, but also healthier. And so lower sodium, lower sugar for products that have sugar and fat. It's a big deal. And there's now legislation in Europe and might come to the US where you're not going to be able to advertise on TV or in certain other advertising. You're not going to be able to have products on an end cap if you're selling something that has a certain level of fat or certain level of sodium. That's a big problem for a company like Pepsi, who is really good at marketing and selling products. And so there's external motivation like that, also internal, like we want to survive as a company. And there's a lot of small mom and pop companies, a lot in California, but in other places that are making healthier snacks. I don't know if you've had I had a water popped water lily seeds out of India. It's pretty cool. Bahana brand. I think it was a Shark Tank thing. It tastes horrible, but it's kind of cool. It's a neat idea. But we brought them in as speakers just to learn and how do they do things. And we, as a big company, we sometimes purchase companies like that, or we make knockoffs or second to markets good if you do it the right way. So anyway, it's a super long answer, but I think the product I'm working on now, big project that we're working on, is to grow that Popcorners brand and be able to make processing of that product more efficient. So I have to be careful what I say, but it's a really exciting project. And the reason why I put it that way, because I think it's so world changing. I get that echo thing down that you guys were using earlier. But it's really big. I do feel that it's going to really change the future of snacking, and being part of Pepsi leading that is really exciting. And I think that healthier snacking, higher protein, called chickpea, or there's a bunch of substrates, cool things that we can grow and put into snacks. And a lot of times now they don't taste that good. Like I mentioned, the water lily seeds, they taste horrible. They got a weird off note to them, but we can do it better, and we can make something taste salty that has no salt in it, and it's not weird chemical engineered. Well, I got to be careful. I'm a chemical engineer. It's not like seen as unnatural. Like we can do natural things, and we're learning so much about the science of flavor and taste and gut health and stuff. So anyway, I feel like this project that we're working on right now, if you ask me in about 3 years, 2 to 3 years, it's gonna hopefully be an amazing one, and it's really exciting. So that's my answer. My best project, I haven't completed it yet. It sounds funny, but yeah.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
Sure.
I actually had a kind of a second question, kind of like involving your new project. So
Okay.
how will you know if it is successful in general? So will you do like a test trial in a certain area, or will you get people to try it first? How does that work?
Yeah. So we do a lot of test markets, and try new things. We're always doing that with flavors and shapes, and we sell off the eaten path as well. I don't know if you guys, it's a pretty cool chip that we have that's like a mosaic pop chip. Flex and Flourish. Now I'm recording, so I'm going to mention all our brands. Quaker rice cakes, yum. Like who eats those, right? Like, I mean, maybe your parents eat those, but I mean, it's now the everything one is pretty amazing, and you top it off with stuff. It's pretty cool. So We do a lot with consumer research, and actually the big data piece of that, there's some really cool tools now, like way more than I would ever even have time to digest, that we have access to, of understanding consumer purchase behavior, and yeah, just understanding it. I can search, like I can go on right now and I could search for anything purchased at a Walmart or Target that has sesame seeds in it last year, and what number was it in the ingredient, and oh, and by the way, plot that versus fat content, and just like show me what that is. Like way too much data. Like it almost is frustrating for me as an engineering nerd. Like I wish I didn't have access to that much data. It's called Rainforest is the system that we use, because it's crazy. And so yeah, we have to me too much data, and so then how do you weed through that becomes a whole other thing. There's majors, there's new I'm not sure how new it is, new for me, but probably not for you guys, but majors of just people that are good at handling big data and deciphering what's important, and how to figure that stuff out. So yes, we do a lot of work like that with consumers. Yeah. How do you get involved with PepsiCo? So that's a great question. So I know that we recruit specific majors that are recruited there. I used to lead our recruiting efforts there, so I'm not sure what's changed a little bit, but feel free to use my email if you guys have any specific ideas or questions or interest. I know we recruit packaging. Obviously, it's a big school for packaging recruiting. Supply chain also. And so we're in R&D, we might hire 15 graduates from around the United States. It's not, we don't hire too many per year, but sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. Supply chain hires hundreds, and it's really what makes our company tick and what helps fund R&D. And I just hired 2 supply chain engineers into R&D, and so it kind of goes around. But how direct route from Michigan State to companies like Pepsi? I mean, career fair is always there. We're doing the virtual career fair thing this year. Internships are super important. If you can land that, or do if you can do an internship. But then the supply chain, there's like a rotation or associates program in supply chain it's by far the biggest pipeline of students from Michigan State into Pepsi. And I gotta imagine Coke and General Mills and Kellogg's, all those are very, very similar in that supply chain engineers, and really I guess the group leadership group engineers are that's the most common way in. So yeah. Any other questions, examples, funny comments, trash talking the Packers? I heard somebody in the back, sounded like a good one, but I couldn't hear. Oh, cool. I got different angles now. Hey, I can see the 2 cameras from class. That's really awesome. Okay, that's really fun to see, because I could see, okay, all right. I know where that camera is. I feel like I'm there almost.
Can
It's
you hear
better
me
than
all right?
being there. Yeah, I can.
Thank you so much for coming to talk to us, Jeff. I think we are out of questions. Anybody want one last question, or forever hold your peace? But we will send out your email in the recap. And
Okay.
if our members can either scan the QR code, join the GroupMe, fill out our engagement and attendance survey so we can track your attendance for this week. And if there's nothing else, you guys are dismissed. If you want to stay around, we have a couple of minutes. Somebody can ask more questions if needed, but
Yeah, I can hang out.
yeah, you guys are welcome to head out if you need. It's late on a Monday.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you for taking time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I'll just hang out and drink my hot water and look at emails until somebody has a question.